welcome everyone. Good evening. We meet again for yet another date with the designer. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are audible,
All right.
Marina.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So we have a very interesting session lined up for you today. You've all seen the poster. That's why you're here. Just a brief introduction about Date with a Designer. As you all know, it's an event hosted by SSD where we invite young designers who are experts in various design disciplines to guide the young minds in their journey through design. It is my pleasure today to welcome and introduce Apeksha Gupta, founder and creative director at The Right Brain. She has over 9 years of experience in creating brands across print and digital platforms. Apeksha founded The Right Brain in 2018, and in a span of less than 2 years, she has been able to work with over 40 clients across 10 industries that include huge names such as Hyatt, Hogan, DLF, L India, and L Decor. She has a deep interest in tactile typography, clay art, and UI UX, as I'm sure we'll be able to see in her presentation. And as the title goes, she's going to help us find our own creative superpowers. It is also my pleasure to introduce Bhavya Parashar. Bhavya, welcome. She is an SSD alumni from the Visual Communication Program, and she will be moderating the session and taking the conversation with Apeksha forward. May I now request Professor Menon, Dean SSD, to say a few words before we start the program?
Apeksha is here. I hope she's there. I mean, I can't see her, but
Hi,
yeah.
I'm here.
Hi, there you are. Great, great. Good to see you. And I'll keep it very brief because we already kind of got a little delayed in connecting up. So, Apeksha is someone who I know for now about 10 years, little more than, probably about 10 years.
Yeah.
And uh, I don't know what I will say about her. All I can say is that she has been extremely enterprising and someone who I have seen grow from being a student all the way to becoming a professional who's running her own office and done some really successful projects and very good big projects. And my association with Apeksha did not stop at just as a student. Uh, it's very interesting for all of you to hear this because one of my very big projects that I did in Gurgaon actually came through Apeksha. She is the one who introduced me to a client with whom I continue to do something or the other, some small work, or we did that big project at one point. So I just want to say this that uh, the whole relationship that you develop over a period of time as a student or as a faculty member does not stop at the institution, and it goes ahead, and even as a professional it does not stop, and it continues either through your networks that people you work with or the collaborators that you work with. And I think Apeksha is a very good example of someone who has successfully sort of walked the talk, so to say. So I hand it over to Apeksha, and I hope everybody will have some great insights from her experiences as a designer. So over to you, Apeksha.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. You've always been this guiding light in my career. So, yeah, you're right about our relationship that's gone beyond being of a student and a teacher. So, I really respect you in all ways possible. So, I'm going to share my screen and start off with my deck. Okay, I hope all of you can see my screen.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so hey everyone, I'm Apeksha, and I'm absolutely stoked to be here. Also, because I've been working with your seniors, SSD alumni for a couple of years, and I've been able to mentor some of them. I am actually not going to waste a lot of time on my introduction because I feel we've got only few minutes and I want to make this super useful for you. So if you want to know more about my work and what I do, please visit my website and feel free to write me. I'll be happy to respond. Talking about visual communication, I think we have a lot of literature that's available online and offline about it. There are so many books, so many tools of information that you can just read and understand what visual communication is. But I guess we're here to address something deeper, and I'm going to focus more on that. So, 10 years in graphic design, that's just a lot. So, like yeah, it's been a decade in graphic design after several leadership roles and finally establishing my own studio. That's something that I've begun to realize is that there was a lot of magic that was happening in the hindsight while I was working. And there were these tiny strengths, as I would like to call them, and there were tiny things that led me to where I am today. And I would like to call these tiny little things as my superpowers, creative superpowers. So today's talk is majorly going to be about what these superpowers are. Talking about my creative superpowers, I think I have discovered two things that have probably helped me excel this far, which is exploring the unknown. So I think as a person, I'm somebody who's always intrigued by the unknown. I love something that I don't understand and I want to chase it and know more about it. So to give you an example, I am a graphic designer and I transitioned into leadership roles and then finally transitioned into being a creative entrepreneur, and I'm somebody who has a deep interest in UI UX and technology, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can about it. And I also I love building with hands, so I creatively express myself through clay and a lot of tactile typography. About the second one, building connection. Now, this is something I probably never saw as one of my superpowers in my entire career span. I probably never looked at it from that perspective, but this is something that came my way through a lot of feedback from the people that I've worked with, from my clients, from my team, that I was able to see I was able to read between the lines and see something that's not given to me. So I like brainstorming, and if a client comes to me without a brief, I love the whole journey that we kind of take on to give a face to their ideas. So that's where I feel that it's really important to build that connection with people who you're working with, empathizing with what they're doing, and treating their product as your own, having faith in what you're doing, having faith in the product itself, because that's the only way you can create meaningful work and foster meaningful relationships during your entire professional journey. Now, thinking about this, I feel did I always have these superpowers? Maybe no. Maybe I don't think it was something that came to me as a gift or it was inherited. This is something that I built over the years. I've cultivated these small practices, small habits that kind of brought all of this together for me. And today I'm going to share a glimpse of that with you. So hoping that these things can help you find and build your creative superpowers. Okay. So the first one being practicing authenticity. Now, what do I really mean by authenticity? And I would like you to take 5 seconds to think about it. Authenticity is not just staying original. So when I talk about it, I'm not asking you to create something that's never been created before. That's nearly impossible. So I'm talking about staying true to your emotions, being comfortable in your own skin, really looking inwards to really see who you are as a person. What are the things you truly care about? And that's all what authenticity is. So to give you an example, since college, I was strongly, my work, all my projects were strongly around social causes. So I did campaigns around LGBTQ. I did campaigns around women empowerment. I did campaigns around women rights. And I think from there, I started discovering that I like working for projects that have a larger societal impact. So how did I really get there? So good way to really know what you truly care about as a creative individual is by doing a lot of self-initiated work, and I firmly believe in this. Um, Create a lot of work, do a lot of self-initiated work, because what happens is that once you take up a project that's not been there is no client direction to it, there is no professor telling you what to do with it. The self initiated work comes from this honest place inside of your heart, which basically brings you one step closer to yourself. So I really urge you to think about it. Create a lot of self initiated work and get a deeper understanding of the kind of work you truly care about. And that will help you stay grounded. It's a good practice to keep. It really keeps you connected to your roots, and it helps you more and more authentic as you progress. Moving on. Get inspired, not influenced. Now, this is something I strongly feel we must talk about it and address the issue. So, with so much information that's available online, we're constantly over indexing our brains. We're constantly are under pressure of creating something fabulous and extraordinary, something that could get more likes, something that's very Pinterest like, something that could go viral. Now, what we don't realize is often when we're creating something Pinterest like, the idea is not to create that. The idea is to create what your project demands. The idea is to create something that's like you, something that's like your clients, that probably fits your clients' needs. And every project, even in college or post work, when you really enter the industry, every project will demand a different outcome, and that outcome can never come from Pinterest or any of the resources that are available online. And when we talk about creating work that's viral, often we don't realize that the work that's gone viral has gone viral because somebody else somewhere in the world decided to stay true to themselves and found their inspiration in the right places. They got inspired by something and then they use their authenticity to really get there. So inspiration can come from really simple things in life. It can come there are, I agree, there are tools, there are platforms, there are things available online and offline that can help you fuel your creativity. But think about what really inspires you in the truest of its sense. That, for example, stargazing really works for me. I like being in nature and just looking at the sky and thinking, and that's where I think I get a lot of inspiration from. So what works for you? Is it playing with your pet? Is it following this individual on Instagram who's completely, maybe from a completely different field altogether? What really works for you? What inspires you? Because I think it's very important for us to identify that what our source of inspiration is, and it doesn't have to be the internet always. So the idea is to get inspired and not influenced. Okay, coming on to my next point, which is experiment and be fearless. So I remember since very early on in college, I was asked to specialize. Now I'm somebody who likes to do 10 things. Okay, so specializing was a little scary to me. So I was told if I don't specialize, I will not land up at high paying jobs. If I don't specialize, I won't be working with the agencies we all dream of working with, because I'm not specializing in either illustration or say animation. So that could really work against me. But the only option that I had there was to trust my own gut. What was to trust myself. I never resonated with the thought of specialization. So the fear of doing something new actually gave me that adrenaline rush to go after it, chase it, and conquer it. And that's somebody who I am. So thinking about visual communication, now there is such a vast and a layered field in itself that you can dig deeper and deeper, and you can still keep going at it. There is graphic design, which is like a broader term. Then there is typography, there is animation, there is wall art, there's graffiti, there is so much. So when you think about specializing, especially for your generation, when you think about specializing, think about, why do you want to specialize? Do you want to specialize because you're good at it? Or do you want to specialize because you haven't tried anything else? So do not restrict yourself, especially now. And I'm so jealous of you guys right now because you have so much time and the world ahead of you. So you can literally pick up anything, try everything, get your hands dirty, make a mess out of it, and then really see that what is it that you want to specialize into. So if you're a product designer, it's absolutely okay for you to experiment with branding. If you are an illustrator, it's extremely okay. It's absolutely fine for you to start writing. Whatever it is, try or keep trying. Don't ever give up, because by the end of it, you'll realize that what will happen is that that added extra knowledge will either help you refine your current skill set, or maybe you will end up being a hybrid between the two, which is even better. And the world is looking for people like that. So yeah, as I said earlier, I am just to remind you, I am a graphic designer who transitioned into a creative entrepreneur. And with my love for UI UX, I creatively express myself through very hands-on materials like tactile typography or clay. And I think that the whole idea came from just experimenting and being fearless. Okay, moving on now. This is one of my most favorite things to talk about because I resonate with it so much. Um, I feel that, as we grow up, we tend to lose this child inside of us, and our world of imagination kind of gets clouded by people's opinion of with what people think of us, what they might say. They may judge us for something. And I think the whole idea of creativity comes from staying childlike, to ask questions, to stay curious, to go after what you want and be unapologetically you. Be who you are and not hiding it from the world. So if you think you're doing something silly and the world may judge you for that, doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter. So, and I know it's easier said than done, but I would want you to let your mind wander. Just let it play, let it breathe, let it be wild and imaginative. Let that child inside of you be alive. Now, how do you really do that? I keep in touch with my inner child by playing games. I am super fond of puzzles and just all kinds of gaming. I love being closer to nature and being open in a park and just relaxing and chilling. I love dancing alone. So, I've had these days, I have these days where there are these 8 hour long calls and there are these meetings and I'm frustrated and I don't want to be a vendor. I don't want to be a manager in that moment. So I literally lock myself up in a room. I play some music and I just dance alone. And that's my idea of being childlike. In that moment, I'm just that little kid who wants to be free. I am not a vendor to a client. I am not a manager to my team. I am not anybody else but that child inside me who likes being free. So once you kind of start doing, it's very liberating to know, there is a kid inside you who's just waiting for you to set itself free. So find your ways of getting back to that inner child, reconnect with that inner child, because that kid inside of you can lead you to some of the most creative places in life and you will be surprised. And just to sum it up, the world is crazy and we must find our ways to keep up with the craziness. So just go wild. It's okay. Stay weird. Nobody's going to judge you. In the longer run, it definitely doesn't matter. Okay. So with risks come rewards. To grow, to succeed in your professional journey in life, it's very important to take chances. And I know you've heard this in various ways before. I know people have told you this many times, but I would like to repeat it because it's all true. It's very important to take that leap of faith, because the chances of you taking off are higher than falling. And even if you fall, you will always have that one little takeaway which will make your next flight better. So how I did that was that I had to work with the best in the industry. I knew it from day one. I knew I would go to any extent to get myself that exposure that's needed to really achieve my goals. And for that, I took a massive pay cut. My first job, I took a massive pay cut because I saw the bigger picture. I knew if I could do this initial period right, if I could get the kind of knowledge I wanted to, I would be at a bigger and a better place. And even when I quit my full-time job to start my own business, I wasn't backed with a team of investors. There were no partners. I had zero investor support. There were no mentors to really guide me there. I took that leap of faith. I went for it because I wanted my work to speak for itself. And when it actually did that, the money bit was never a problem. So I love trusting my gut and taking that leap of faith because it's always going to lead you to the right path. Okay, find value in criticism. Now, relationship between creativity and criticism goes a long way. It's much deeper than we think it is. There are two ways of looking at it. One is that criticism can surely make you doubt yourself. It can make you think you're not good enough. It can, trigger that whole series of self-loathing, and it can make you feel super anxious about the kind of work you're doing or the kind of person you are. But there is another side to it. Criticism can really make you see things from somebody else's lens. It can really help you identify those weaknesses that you are probably not able to see. And once you start identifying those weaknesses, you subconsciously or consciously start improvising on your weaknesses, which basically what does is it sets you free. You stop being insecure about those weaknesses because now those weaknesses have become your strength. So, and creative criticism can also be of two kinds. It could be positive and negative, but it's completely up to you how you take that criticism, pick the right points out of it, and turn it around and use it in your favor. So surround yourself with people who will give you that kind of feedback, with people who will tell you that okay, this is something you need to improvise on, and then you take it with a pinch of salt. If you have to take it in the most whatever way works for you, but try and find value in that criticism. It's literally a shift of perspective. That's all that you need to do. So in order to really start doing that, it's very important for us to be able to detach ourselves from the work that we're doing. By detachment, I don't mean don't care about your work. By detachment, I mean see your work as a separate thing, entity altogether. When somebody is criticizing your work, they are not criticizing you. They are not defining you as a person. So don't get defined by it. Take criticism in, take find the value in that criticism and really see how can it work in your favor. And yeah, that's all. The idea is to identify your weaknesses and aim for excellence, and criticism and feedback plays a very important role in that. So we're almost towards the end of it. I know this is a lot of information to process, and we're not talking about these things on a daily basis, which is why I feel there is a need to address these things. So a few questions I would want to leave you with, just for you to ponder upon, that what do I truly care about as a creative individual? What inspires me? Where does my inspiration come from? What am I scared of? I would suggest you do that first. When was the last time I let myself be? Have I used 100% of my creative potential yet? Now, the last question is something that has literally stuck with me all my life. Every night when I hit the bed, I always ask myself this question, that have I used the 100%, my full creative potential? Can I make tomorrow better? Is there a way we can improvise what we're doing and make it much better than what it is today? And this is something that will truly, truly keep you going in the longer run. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And I'm open for questions now. Over to you, Bhavya.
Bhavya, are you there? I don't see her here.
Should I?
Marina, why don't you take up the question in the meantime so that we do not lose on any time?
Sure, I can do that. But I think Bhavya also had something to start the Q&A session. She had some conversation planned with Apeksha, which she wanted to take forward.
I can see Bhavya's name there, but probably not able to log in or something, probably, or
Mm, I can't even see her name there.
So I'm getting in touch with her. Meanwhile, I think Apeksha, yeah, I will take up the questions that are coming up on our chat box, if that's okay.
Sure,
All
you
right,
could do
all
that.
right. So thank you. First of all, I would just say thank you for that very inspiring presentation. I think a lot of takeaways from it for our students. So Neha Nagpal is asking, is the presentation made in Illustrator, the one that you just presented?
Yes, it is. Being a designer, I think that's the easiest way. All of us can just make our presentation in Illustrator versus Keynote. So yeah.
All right. So Sachin sir, who's the HOD of Visual Communication here at SSG, is asking, which was your most challenging project that you worked on, which taught you the most? And how important is sketching in the midst of all of the software?
Okay. The most challenging project, I think, and I think Shay is here with me on the call. I can see his name. It's something that Shay and I did together very recently. We're working on this skill development company's app and web. And I have learned so much from Shay there. And it's been very challenging since we had to really conduct a lot of user interviews, get in touch with people, get an understanding of how this generation really perceives skills. And that was something that really got me into UI UX in the first place. So yeah, that was one of the most challenging projects we've been working on. And how important is sketching? I think for me, I'm very old school, so sketching always works for me. Be it the wireframes for UI UX, be it the small doodles that I do before branding, or even just writing my thoughts down. I think writing or sketching, it nothing replaces that for me. Software obviously helps me make things better and refine it a little more, but for me, nothing kind of beats a pen and paper. I think Bhavya is also here.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Bhavya is here. Bhavya, if you can take over.
Okay, yeah. So where I am, it's raining really hard. So yeah, I lost the internet
Okay.
connection. But yeah, so hi, that was quite insightful. That was a lot to take in.
I am I am glad, but yeah, I know it was a lot of information.
Yeah. So where do you want to start? Like, where, how So I have one question. So is since you have been in industry for a long time now, and you have seen it in a different time than us, than me
Right.
and my juniors and even some of
Right.
my seniors. So you've seen a different time. You've seen a different
Right.
kind of shift than we have. So would you say that getting into the industry and working is actually as difficult as we're told that it is while we're still students?
Okay, I'm actually glad that we're even speaking about this, because getting into the industry is not as hard. Sustaining is hard. I wouldn't call it hard, but it's tricky. It really depends on the kind of person you are and what your thresholds are like. Because tell me, which industry isn't difficult? Which industry isn't hard to be in? It really depends on you and your resilience actually as a person, that how far can you go? How far can you push your boundaries? Because if you're, especially, I think we have an advantage in design that if we are good at what we do, the degrees don't matter, the colleges, the name behind it doesn't matter. Your work speaks for itself. Versus if you look at management, if you look at any other industry, engineering, everybody wants to see that which college are you from, what degrees do you have. When we talk about designers, people just ask for your work link, and that's all that matters. That's all that. So I think we're fairly in a better place. And it's just that design has always been seen in that light, that oh my god, it's a creative industry and people are mad and there's going to be yelling and all of this is going to happen, which is like a culture. It doesn't define the industry. It doesn't define the ways of working. And yeah, if you ever encounter such people or practices which are unethical, you are free to leave. You are free to speak up for yourself. So again, like, it really depends on what your thresholds are and who you are as a person, what your resilience level is. So being in design, I think I've met the most important people in my life, personally and professionally, through my work. And that was something that I decided to build upon. So everything, my work has literally given me this one entire side of my life. So I wouldn't call it hard. I would probably call it a little tricky.
Hmm. So you
Yeah.
believe that it's not that hard, right? In our industry, to make space for yourself, there's always space for everyone.
Yeah. If you are strong enough to do that, then people will welcome you with the arms open.
Right, because from what I remember in college, there were times when we were convinced, me and my friends that you know of. So we were all pretty convinced that it's very difficult. It's difficult to stay and sustain and find work and keep doing anything that can be defined as good work, because it is also
Yeah.
important to somehow get there, that
Yeah.
what you are doing can be called good. So that brings me to my next question. Have you always liked all your design work?
Um, I don't know if I've liked all of my work, but I've been pretty confident about my work because I've only done work that I feel confident about, that I have full faith in. Because even if I'm doing one tiny social media post, when I was an intern, I was literally taking pamphlets and redesigning them. So even
Yeah.
when I did that, I did it with full shiddat. I put myself out there and I was like, I'm going to create the best pamphlet that exists on this planet. So that's the kind of approach I had towards my work. But at the same time, I am someone who kind of detaches myself from work very quick. So it's important to move on. It's important to detach yourself from what you've done and then move on to the next project. What's next? That's the kind of attitude that I have, that okay, what's coming my way? And that's somebody who
Yeah.
I've been. So yeah, I've created work that I liked and I've been confident about.
Okay. That that makes sense. Um, we have a lot of questions in the chat, so should I just
Okay, you
start
can,
with
yeah,
those
sure.
because it's important that we answer those.
Sure, definitely.
Kapil Nagpal is asking, what inspires you the most and how do you deal with creative blocks?
Okay, Priya, I think what inspires me the most, I love being under the sky. I love stargazing. Just the idea of not having any boundaries in front of me kind of liberates me. And how do you deal with creative blocks? I think by just being under the sky, where I let myself be. Creative blocks are something that can last from days to even months, and it's a difficult process. So sometimes when you're working with real deadlines, those creative blocks are not helping. So the idea is that you look around and see if your colleagues can help you break that creative block, if they can take a little bit of load from your shoulder so that you have some space to breathe. If not, then there are so many tools available online. There are games that are available online. There are so many card games that you can buy online, and they really, really help you break those creative blocks, because creative blocks are just in your head, and once you kind of get over it, you're good to go. So you have to find your own ways of what kind of works for you. Is it just like playing with your pets, or just listening to music, not doing anything, eating something? Really depends on who you are as a person.
Yeah, it really has no definition.
Yeah.
So now we have next question from Khushi. She's asking, how do you move forward with clients which aren't sure about what they want in detail or are not able to give you a proper brief?
Okay, so Kuji, I think that's one of my most favorite things to do, and I think this is where the opportunity lies, when the client doesn't know what they want. So you ask them a lot of questions, and there are so many questions you can ask them, which can help you build a framework for them to identify what they really need. So by asking questions and asking the right questions about who they are, what their vision is like, who the audience is, and then about understanding about what they are as people, you get to know, you again like have to empathize with them. You have to truly care about them to get that output out of them, that okay, this is what they're exactly looking at. Or by presenting just options that are extremely different from each other. When we say that present us with two options, we're often just modifying the first one a little bit to move to the second. But I always say that your two options should be dramatically different from each other, so the client is at least able to differentiate and tell you that, okay, I prefer this and not this.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
our next question from Janvi is, how important is self-initiated / personal work in our portfolio?
Yeah, okay. So I think, Bhavya, you and I both come from the same place over here because we've done so much self-initiated work, and we've been people who believe in self-initiated work. And I think that's something that really helps you keep grounded, that really helps you be who you are and stay in touch with your roots. So self-initiated work, if nothing else, it gives you a great opportunity to show your talent to the world and show them what you're capable of doing, because not all the time you will have these opportunities coming from the outside world. So you create those opportunities for yourself and showcase what you've got, because as an end result, you will only benefit from it.
That's true. So, like, I have another question related to this question. So, like, she has asked that how important is self-initiated work in our portfolio. Me and my friends, we've been through this, that at one point we felt that most work in our portfolio is self-initiated. Or where is the balance? So, is it better? Because sometimes we have done professionally the work, the kind of work that's not the most amazing looking, or the one that looks like the most interesting or the most creative one.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you had to do that because you're just beginning. You've just started
right,
working. So you're
right,
just trying to get something under the belt, right? Just trying to
right,
get something in your
right,
portfolio that this is what I've done professionally. But at the
right,
same time, the work that you've done personally, your personal projects, those are more fun looking, more creative, more
right,
passionate projects.
right.
So, how do you create balance? Or is one preferred over the other while you're looking at a
Um,
portfolio?
okay. So when I am looking at a portfolio, for me, what matters is the thought, the concept, and the work behind it. So if you're staying true to yourself and creating authentic work, which is so first, just understanding what self-initiated work means to you. Is it just an illustration that's off the internet? Then I don't want to look at it because I've seen enough of it. Is it something that probably is you and you are creatively expressing yourself through that work? Then I want to definitely look at it. Now, what happens a lot of time when you're in this transition process from college to industry work, you don't have so much industry work and you have a lot of self-initiated work, which is absolutely fine. It's absolutely okay as long as it's something that you relate to, that you think makes sense, and the world will be able to relate to it. So if that is there, I don't think the balance comes with time, because the more you kind of get in the industry, you get better work. It's just a play of time and experience, and that is the balance comes only by creating as much as you can. So right now, create hundreds of self-initiated projects, and then you'll land up at one something that kind of matches your thing. And then you do like 10 more self-initiated, you will get 10 more projects. And that's how you kind of strike the balance. So you have to keep at it. There is no, I can't give you like a rule book that follow these processes and then you will land up at this. It's just by creating as much as you can.
Right. So I don't know. I really think that there is no balance over here because
There is no balance.
don't have time, you are not able to do any self-initiated work, you're not very happy with yourself, but at the same time you have a lot to show for yourself, for your professional portfolio. But then there
Yeah,
are times when you're free for months, for weeks, like during this pandemic,
yeah, yeah.
you've done so much self-initiated work that you just think like, oh, maybe not, nothing is professional, who would pay me for this? So it
But you
yeah,
will be
that's
surprised that you will meet people who will be willing to pay you for that. And but before that, there is a lot of practice that goes into it. There is a lot of hard work that you have to do. There is a lot of mental strength that it takes to really keep at it. So
right.
yeah, you will get there at some point. The idea is to just keep creating, have faith, and be patient.
Hmm. Because right now I'm only able to think of all of this while, I was also still in college. So me and my friends, we used to think about all of these things, that these were our concerns. So, yeah, next question. Okay, so it's the same question again by Vishakha. How do you manage the barriers to creativity at work?
Right. I think we've already got that, so we can move on to the other question.
Okay. So Prithvi Singh is asking, when you are doing a project, do you put a touch that represents you, or do you just go with the ideas that are given by the person?
Okay, so Prithvi, I think the ideas have to come from you. Sometimes it can come from the client, and I understand when you're starting your career, most of the ideas are coming from the clients, but you have to find the right balance there. Again, it comes to the fact of practicing your creative voice. So you decide that which are the ideas that you want to push forward that could bring value to your client's product or service, and then find a middle ground to work on it. And this is again something that comes by just being in the industry and working with the right kind of people. So I'm not necessarily putting my touch to everything, because maybe that's not what a project demands. It a lot of times is based on what a product or what the consumer demands, what the end goal of that project is. Yeah, sure, if it's something which is more artistic and is self-initiated, I make sure that I'm all over that artwork. But if you look at the work that we've done for our clients, it's purely we're translating their vision into something more tangible through the skills that we've got, and adding value through our knowledge and our skill set.
Right. So, okay, that brings me to another question, and that is that have you ever refused any clients because their work was not making you feel any good? It was not
Yeah,
creative or interesting enough.
so many times. I think it's important to say no, not because either like the project is not interesting, or so we see a project as, oh, it's not that creative, it's not that interesting. But the correct way of looking at it is that, does that project align with my creative goals? Does that it is it something that I want to put it in my portfolio and say that, okay, this is the kind of work that I want to do. So as a company, as Right Brained, we made a conscious decision of not doing social media, because we are very print and hands-on kind of people, and we're now going understanding more and more technology and scaling into UI UX. So we decided that this is something that we don't want to do. Now, again, these are very conscious choices you make as an individual, that what is it that doesn't align with your goals. It doesn't make that project bad, it doesn't make it less interesting or less creative. It's just simply that is not in sync with your thought process, and that's absolutely fine.
Perfect. And how do you say no politely and professionally, and in a way that doesn't strain your relationship with that particular
I
person,
think
because they might be
the
of use in future,
Sure.
that connection.
I truly believe in not burning bridges. I think that's not a wise thing to do at the start of your career, or even when you're, I think the whole design community, I think the creativity thrives through collaboration. So burning bridges is not a wise thing, definitely. How do you say no? For me, I just make sure that I'm writing a polite email and saying that I would have loved to work on your project, but right now seems like my bandwidth doesn't allow for it. Or I am deeply interested in working with you, but right now looks like my plate is too full. So that it doesn't come across as something. And yeah, always do mention that looking forward to work with you in the future, because that just opens a door of opportunity, and it's important to keep that door always open.
Right. So, next question from Tapasya is, did you plan to diversify your superpowers at the beginning of your career, or did you acquire them while moving along? Matching professional skills to intended superpowers is what young designers still pursuing their education are struggling with.
I'm just going to read that question once again. Professional skills to intended superpowers is what young designers are pursuing their education. Okay, so Tabasya, no, I did not. I did not plan anything in the first place. I think the pointers that I've shared with you today are more like realizations that happened over a period of time, and why I chose to share this with you is because I thought it's important for people to start reflecting upon these things, because a lot of introspection and reflection can only help you define your superpowers. So again, there is no yeah, I did acquire them while moving along, and I think these were more like habits that I cultivated over last few years. Now, your professional skills and your superpowers can be two completely different things. You know, you could, it doesn't have to be correlated. Your professional, your superpowers are more you, what you are as a person, your goals, your mental agility. It's all about that. Your work, your professional skills are something that you build basis on the kind of work you like doing, or maybe the professional skills that you've learned and learned over, when you're studying, you've learned over a period of time. But I don't think both of them are correlated. You can make them correlated if you have to, but your superpowers, your strengths are something deeper which you enjoy as a creative individual.
Right.
And your skills is something very, external, it's not internal.
So they're more like qualities that you can have through different areas of life and not
Correct.
just
Right,
professional
right.
qualities.
Correct, right, absolutely.
Hmm. So another question from Sagar Pandita. Hi Apeksha, this was a very motivating meet and I really appreciate the effort from you to give us an insight to what it takes to be a true designer. My question is, as you said, taking risks gives you higher rewards. Can a budding designer actually start their own brand or a company on their own if they strongly believe in it?
Okay, I think you can, but what really counts is the experience. I think you need to be able to do a lot of work before you actually take that major step, because sometimes we think it's pretty easy to start something on your own, but what we don't realize is the financial pressures that come with it, is managing the day-to-day admin tasks of it that come with it. So you can definitely go for it if you are strong enough. If you have the right resources and people around you, then go for it. But I would also say that get that right kind of exposure. So say you want to start something in visual communication, graphic design, get a proper understanding of it, know it to the deepest of its layers. So know what it takes to go to a printer, how does the post production thing pan out, how does a brand launch take place, what are the things you have to do to build a brand, to make sure the execution is happening correctly. So all those technicalities, if you're aware of those, if you think you can work towards those, then really go for it. Again, it's something that depends on where are you in your life right now. So, but just having that exposure is super important, and knowing the realities of starting up a business is also super important.
Right. Yeah, because you need experience if you're starting something of your own. You need to know the right words even because I know that
Exactly.
you do not even have the right terminology if you've not worked in a particular
Yeah.
area. You do
Yeah.
not know what three people are talking about, and you absolutely do not understand the short forms and everything else. So it's
Right.
important to understand the tips and tricks of the trade and everything else about it because if you
Definitely.
don't you'd feel like you're lacking or you're going to make you will end up making mistakes that are pretty obvious to other people with experience.
Yeah, I feel like it's okay to make mistakes. I just feel that you need to have the right kind of knowledge and tools to really support what you're going to do.
Learning from others'
Yeah,
mistakes.
and you I think you have to be so strong, and you just need to be aware of your realities. You need to be aware of the consequences, because starting your own business or a studio is something that we all dream of as young designers, that one day we're going to start out on our own. But it comes with so many responsibilities that are not told to you. So doing a little bit more research about that and talking to people who've done this, who really, finding mentors in that space and understanding how this whole thing works can really help you decide if this is the right time or not.
True. So another question that Sagar has is that what are your views about design being a free and boundless field is being stagnated and controlled when we actually work for corporates?
So actually working for corporates, it's not that stagnated, because I've been a consultant. I've been a consultant to very big corporates, and I don't think it's stagnated. It depends on which level are you joining that structure in. But yeah, the the views on creativity, creativity is such a vast field that I could use like this entire, like another 1 hour to really elaborate and touch upon the pointers of the vastness of it. So I think if we can quickly address the other questions as well, it'll be great. And then, guys, please feel free to write to me about all the questions that you have, and I would love to respond to all of them.
Right. Okay. So let's move on to next question by Mehak. She's asking, when did you learn web designing, or do you have a team for that? And how do you approach and convert high-profile clients like L?
Okay, when I learned web designing, I can't really give you a timeline because that's been something that I've been actually doing since college. I've only been working on improvising this every year, every day, every month. I've been only constantly working. But how I actually started building a career in UI UX is, I think, about 2 years back when I actually set up the right brain, because I did not want to be restricted to the idea of just brand design or graphic design. As I said, I'm somebody who loves trying scary things, new things. So I think it happened about 2 years back. And how do you approach high profile clients is by building the right kind of network, being in the right kind of network, which again comes through by being in the industry, surrounding yourself with the right kind of people, working for the right companies, working for the right projects, and putting yourself out there. So it's important to showcase your work on whatever platforms possible.
Perfect.
I think we're
So
running really short on time, and I think we can
we have
just
a few more
quickly,
questions.
yeah.
Okay, so next question is there anything you'd do differently if you were to start a business now? What was your first project like?
What was my first project like? I think the first project I actually picked up was a social media project, and it's only by doing that I realized that that's something I don't enjoy doing. It's not in sync with my goals. So I left that project, and that's when I really started focusing on the kind of projects I want to be associated with. I started writing emails to all the people in my network. There were people, and I think I've been very, very fortunate and very lucky that a lot of I had the right kind of people to send the right kind of work my way. So a lot of my word came from word of mouth. It came based on the relationships I built over the years. It came from the people I worked in the past, and yeah, that's it.
All right, perfect. So next question is, what was your daily routine for achieving success? What are the things that we should remember to be successful?
Okay, this is a very broad question. I don't really have a daily routine as such. There is no routine that I follow. I think I'm very erratic as a creative individual. And since Bhavya, you've worked for me, and we've worked together for such a long time, we know that this routine kind of kills us. It just kills our creativity, and it's something that we can't keep up with. I forgot the second part of the question. What was that?
What are the things that we should remember to be successful?
I think being authentic, I think that's really, really, truly worked for me. Being authentic and just being humble about it. And, there is a saying that, what is that saying? That when the wind comes, the tree that bends survives. So, resilience and adapting to the kind of circumstances life throws you with, just dealing with those circumstances, I think becomes very important, and being flexible enough to bend when life needs you to bend. I think that's my way of being successful, just being true to myself and
Mhm.
not trying to be someone else.
Right. Next question by Hridaya Taneja is, how do you deal with deadlines? Does it hamper your creativity or creative process, or is it the other way around?
I think deadlines, for us as creative people, I think deadlines is the only way we can get work out. Otherwise, the work becomes like this mammoth of a project and it never ends. So people who work with me know that I always work with deadlines. I have always planned every day. We know the exact tasks that we're taking up in the day. Nothing extra. If there is something ad hoc, we make time for it. But most of our work is strictly planned around the deadlines because that's the only way we're able to deliver. And we work with very realistic deadlines that are basically in sync. So they are mutually decided timelines with our clients, and we decide to stick on it because otherwise there's just no end to it. The creative process is something that can go on for years.
Right. That's very true. A project can keep on going for months and months. So, yeah, our next question by Alicia is, how do you handle deadlines? And at the same time, oh, it's the same question again. Then we have another question by Sachin, and it's, everyone is talking about UX UI now. Where does visual communication go beyond UX UI?
I think visual communication is anything that communicates visually to you. So I see UI UX not as a very, yeah, in terms of technicalities, it's a completely different field altogether, but there is a lot of overlap. There is a lot of overlap between UI and visual communication. Visual communication is also animation. It's also graffiti. It's also what you do, Bhavya. It's being this tattoo artist. It's so many things. So as I said, don't go by the book. Don't go by what the world tells you what visual communication is. Go by your own definition of it. And in terms of UI UX, I think there's just, if you really make yourself um, open to receiving that kind of knowledge, I think it's very easy to learn UI UX as well. I'm sure like people specialize in it, but if you have it in you to learn something which is that complex, then go for it. I mean, it's just another field altogether. And I know UI UX is the future, everybody's talking about it, but not to discount the fact that logos and branding and everything is not going anywhere. It's very important for brands to have a face before they even get to anywhere else. So again, it's such a deep, it's such a vast thing, vast topic to really address. So it has many layers to it. Sorry
Right.
guys, I'm running really short on time and I have a meeting, so if we can wrap it up quickly in another 5 minutes.
So,
Sure.
next
I think,
question
Bhavya,
is
yeah, you can take up the last question maybe.
Sure.
okay. Okay, next question, our last question is, what is the future of advertising and visual communication in your opinion?
I think okay, I will answer this slightly differently. The future is collaboration. The future is the overlap. The future is not just visual communication or what was the other thing?
What is the future of advertising and visual communication?
Advertising, right? So I think the future is collaboration. The more now, I think we see more of these agencies which do everything, or people who are trying to do everything. When I work with somebody who's deeply interested in UI UX, I'm sure there's a part of them who's also interested in just building a brand. So again, I think the future lies between in hybrids, in being a hybrid between the two. So which is why again I am somebody who probably does not really wanted to, I never wanted to specialize purely because of that, because I feel that the future is collaboration. When you collaborate, you create something radical, and I think that's something that we should always keep it at the back of our heads, that all these creative fields, they're all interconnected, and future is collaboration.
That was a very good point to end on. So, yeah, future is collaboration. That should be a t-shirt.
Yes. I will get one.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Cool.
that was very insightful, and thank you for doing this with all of us. There
I
are
am
quite a
so
lot of
glad that I did this.
Thank you,
so
Apeksha, and thank you, Bhavya, for spending so much time with us. I know you have a busy schedule, Apeksha, but thank
Mhm.
you, and I'm sure our students have a lot to take back from this interaction.
I hope
Thank
so
you,
too.
thank you,
Thank you so much,
and we
Marina.
look forward to having more such events where we can invite you and
Oh,
take this
definitely.
conversation forward.
I would love to do that.
Thank you
All
again.
right. Thank you so much. Bye.
okay. Bye all.